everybody. Welcome to A Drink with Live. We are so glad that you are here. I am Kat. I am your host, and we are just so glad to have y'all tonight. I hear there are people from the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest representing. So thank you for being here. You are in for quite the treat with tonight's guests. So cheers to you. First of all, I hope y'all are sipping something. Without further ado, our guest tonight, I love this woman so much. She's incredible. Her contributions to making a difference truly in our world are unreal. And she is a genuine, lovely human as well, on top of all of that. Her show on CNN, This is Life with Lisa Ling, in its 8th season. So let's bring her here to hear more about it. Lisa Ling, cheers to you.
Kat, so great to see you. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining tonight. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Don't we love the technology, the Zoom of it all in 2021? Well, cheers to you. You know, you're supposed to sip or it's, bad luck. What do you have in there? Is that some red wine? What is your drink of choice?
I'm drinking a Cabernet Sauvignon. And I don't normally drink when it's still daytime, but I'm going to just enjoy this.
As you should. You have been so busy. And you actually just answered one of my first questions because, a lot of people come on and they drink tea and some of us drink alcohol, but I feel like so many people are re-examining their relationship with alcohol because of COVID, because a lot of people are just drinking all the time. Do you mind me asking, like, what is your typical? Do you drink occasionally on the weekends only, or you just said usually at least when it's dark?
Well, I have to admit, I've never really been a big drinker. I'm a lightweight, so, I'm like a one drink date. But since COVID got rooted in our country, I have to admit that I have about one drink, no more than two, usually 2 full glasses. But every single night, I just kind of needed it to calm myself down. As you know, things were pretty overwhelming for a long time. They still are, with 2 kids in the house all the time. So the moment they went to bed, it was just like, I need my wine. But, fortunately, I think I've always been pretty good at tempering myself and not ever going overboard, but that's just that little bit.
A little bit doesn't hurt anybody. I know. I'm actually having a gin tonight, so that's kind of rare for Thursday too. But well, thank you for sharing. What the hell? Somebody said to me yesterday, they're like, the world's ending anyway, Kat. Stop overthinking everything. I'm like, yeah, okay. That's a decent attitude to have these days. Just, day at a time, and it could all blow up anyway. It kind of is. But I'm going to try and turn this positive.
Yeah.
And I want to play a little bit with you and get into some lighter things, but I definitely want to begin with some more serious topics because they are too important to not address. And we can start with This is Life returning to CNN on Sunday, October 10th. I was so fortunate enough to see that first episode already. And I just have to tell you, Lisa, it was just so powerful. It was gritty. It was eye-opening in so many ways. I thought I was getting this history lesson, first of all, in so many ways. You were exploring the origins of Asian American hate. And I want everyone watching this to please go and see it. But why don't you tell everyone a little bit about it, please? And then just the impact that you were hoping to make with this first episode anyway.
Well, thanks, Kat, first of all, for taking the time to even watch it in advance of it airing on Sunday. Our show has been on the air now for 8 seasons. Our 8th season is about to launch on Sunday. And because of COVID, we had to pivot a little bit because my show is one that is very emotional. Sometimes it's physical. And we had to employ a lot of precautions in the way that we shoot. And so in 2020, in June, people on social media were posting about Juneteenth. Now, we all know what Juneteenth is now. It's now been made a federal holiday. But when people started posting about it, I just thought to myself, I'm so embarrassed that I didn't know that Juneteenth, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was considered the official end of slavery. And it propelled me to think about all of those things, all of those events that have happened in American history that didn't make it into our history books, and how many of them have actually gone to impact how we live and how we think today. And so that was the impetus for season 8 of This Is Life. Every episode is going to be grounded in one moment or event in our history. We dissect it to look at where, where we are today with the issue. And so the first episode um, is about the murder of a young Chinese American man in Detroit in 1982. As we all know, Detroit was the automotive capital of the world. And in the early 80s, there began a severe economic downturn, and people were starting to lose their jobs in the automobile industry and blaming it on Japan, because Japan was producing all these fuel efficient cars. And so many people were losing jobs, and this anti-Japanese, anti-Asian sentiment began to penetrate the city. And this young Chinese American man was at a bar celebrating his bachelor party. He was about to get married, and two out of work auto workers, they got into an altercation. They accused him of being Japanese and taking away their jobs. And they waited for Vincent Chin outside of the bar, and they beat him to death. And those two men never served a day in prison. And this case became the first ever civil rights case involving an Asian person, and really galvanized the Asian American community. And when you think about what's happening now, since COVID got rooted in America, Asian Americans are again being scapegoated and have been blamed for bringing this virus to this country. Um, and so many Asians have been attacks. I mean, attacks on Asians in this country have increased 1,300% since the start of COVID. And so we're looking at this pattern of scapegoating and discrimination that Vincent Chin experienced, but that has even predated that by centuries. So every episode, for me, going to history class in high school was really boring, because history was kind of told through one lens. But I've always just been so innately curious about history, always. And when I learned about all of these things, we're doing an episode about the Chicago race riot of 1919. We're doing an episode about the origins of conspiracy theories, about the oldest profession, prostitution, because there's a debate right now about whether we should decriminalize prostitution. Well, there's one period in American history when prostitution was actually legal, and we explore that. So many things that, I'm so proud to kind of present. History can often be dry, but I like to think that we've produced episodes that are really entertaining and interesting, and that you'll walk away actually learning something from.
Oh my gosh, it's impossible not to. And I feel like watching you through this journey, at least in the first episode, that even you were learning things as you went along. You're like, wait, what? Why? How did we not know this? Why were we not taught this? And even more specifically in the first episode, we're so used to seeing you travel the world and you tell other people's stories, but you were very much a part of this story as an Asian American. I can only imagine it was particularly emotional for you. I mean, there were a lot of tears in the episode. I was crying like a baby. Not that tears make change, or we have to do a lot more than that to see progress. But what was it like for you as a journalist? You had to be affected a little bit more than perhaps the average story.
Well, yeah, you're so right. I mean, I have gotten pretty decent at telling other people's stories. And so to tell this story that is so close to me and the community right now was incredibly emotional and challenging. But so important. I mean, when you think about it, Kat, I mean, you have kids that are in school. I mean, I never knew anything about Asian American history. Like I never knew growing up that there was a Chinese Exclusion Act, that Chinese people were the only people in American history to have not been allowed to immigrate to the United States. I didn't know that in World War II, over 120,000 Japanese people, most of whom were American citizens, were forced to live in incarceration camps for 4 years during World War II, after the Japanese government bombed Pearl Harbor. And so there's so many pivotal moments in Asian American history that didn't make it into my history books, and therefore I grew up not knowing about them. And what happens when we don't have any reference for Asian American history? It becomes really easy to overlook Asian people or even dehumanize them because we have no reference for their contributions, for their struggles, for their triumphs. And so I hope that people will tune in just to educate themselves about the diversity that exists within the Asian community, but also about, the things that we've contributed to this country as well.
And at the very beginning of the episode, you say, I have been waiting my whole life to tell this story. Is that pointing to, I know back when you were a little girl, you were teased a lot and you were othered. Is this a part of that, kind of a full circle for you to dive into this like full on?
It's a great question, Kat. I grew up feeling so much shame about my ethnicity because I was one of the few Asians in my community. I hated being Asian, and I didn't like inviting anyone to my house because it always smelled like Chinese food. I was always so embarrassed when my parents would speak Chinese in front of my friends, even though they spoke perfect English. And so for me, just this idea that one day I would be able to not only tell this story about the contributions and the things that Asian Americans have endured in this country, but I'm also going to be doing another show for HBO Max called Takeout, which is an exploration of Asian American histories through the lens of food. And who doesn't love Asian food? It's just it's this way to kind of open the door to these histories and these amazing stories that we would have never probably known about otherwise.
Has to be fun. I was gonna, of course, ask you about that show, and you just touched on it just a little bit, but this sounds like a foray for you into something. I mean, I assume it's a little lighter, or is it, it's food? And what can you tell us a little bit more about it? And can I please come along?
Absolutely. So I'm very specific about the fact that this is a food show and not a cooking show because I don't know how to cook anything other than like some scrambled eggs for my kids in the morning. But again, like people love Asian food, and in some ways, Chinese restaurants have become as ubiquitous as McDonald's. There are many towns in this country that don't have McDonald's, but they have Chinese restaurants. And so learning the stories of the people who may have had completely different backgrounds like mine, and pursued opening a restaurant because it was their pathway to the American dream, has been incredible. We've shot all 6 episodes, and I cannot tell you how special every episode is. I mean, you will experience the full range of emotions. You will cry, you will laugh, you will find yourself salivating over the incredible food. And again, I think you'll walk away feeling more educated about your fellow humans. And they're just really beautiful episodes. And as a little girl who grew up feeling so much shame about my ethnic background, to be able to tell these stories and celebrate this incredible culture that I come from, and also the vastness of the Asian American diaspora is just, it's so awesome. I mean, there are so many different kinds of Asians in this country with totally unique languages and totally unique cultures and histories. And to be able to present that to a wider audience is such an incredible honor.
And to point out that, a lot of modern day America was built on the backs of all of those Asian Americans you are describing. And it's just so important to see that and be reminded of that. And speaking to you, talking about when you were a little girl and how you felt so differently then, and you felt this shame. I love seeing the relationship with your own daughters, which is also a short snippet of the first episode where, you're reading with them and you're showing them and you're alerting them to what, former Asians in America were going through to get to this point. And it wasn't pretty. And those can be tough discussions to have with little ones. But I love that you're doing that. And I love that you incorporated that in the show because it is truth. It is truth. And unless we really examine that, then it's just the same all over again, right?
Well, Kat, there's this huge debate going on right now about the kinds of history that we should teach in
Right.
schools. And look, when kids are kids, this is when empathy is developed, empathy is learned. And the more kids learn about things that other Americans have experienced, again, or even contributed or triumphed, that inevitably will allow them to become more empathetic. And I don't know how many mothers there are who are watching this right now, but it's been really important to communicate these kinds of things to my own kids. I mean, my own kids, they know about the Chinese Exclusion Act. They know about Japanese internment. They know about Jim Crow laws. My 5-year-old, if you ask her who Rosa Parks is, she could tell you right now. And the other day, actually, this happened a couple of months ago. A little boy at my 8-year-old school called her Ching Chong, and
Mm.
her best friend, without missing a beat, said, "I will not be a bystander to this," and went and told the teacher. And I just have to give it up to my daughter's best friend's parents, because they obviously care about their daughter enough to educate her about things that her friends might be experiencing. I get emotional even thinking about this, because this is it's incumbent upon us as parents to teach kids how to be more tolerant, how to be more appreciative, how to understand other people. The reason why we're in this place that we are right now, which is like so divided and so volatile, I think, is because we were never really taught, other cultures and how to appreciate the contributions of other communities. And so at the very least, us as parents, we can teach these things to our kids. And my daughter's best friend's parents, I mean, to me, that like deserves like the gold medal of parenting.
Well, because that's how ultimately we'll be able to measure change. So, God, that is such a cool story. Thank you for sharing that. As a journalist, speaking of divisiveness and our reality today in this world, this misinformation out there, as it pertains to our history, but also just, the pandemic and vaccines and science. And there's just so much that contributes to, um, the rather heavy state that we all find ourselves in right now. How has that affected you as a journalist, and how you have to do your job and the position that you are in with your work? Does it affect you, or is it just business as usual because you are a truth seeker, or what do you make of all of that?
Well, I think it's affected all of us. In fact, we have an episode about conspiracy theories coming up on this season of the show. And look, I mean, I don't want to get political here, and I won't, because that doesn't serve any, it's not positive, right? But when mainstream media is totally disavowed, right? When you characterize mainstream media as fake, people are going to look for places to find information, and very often they will go to things like YouTube. One of the reasons why the population that has become most vulnerable to conspiracy theories is like the baby boomer generation, our parents and grandparents, is because I don't know that people really understand these algorithms that are at work on things like YouTube. When you put something into YouTube, let's say you heard someone, talk about, some anti-vax information, right? And you put that into YouTube. Well, your feed instantly populates with like information that essentially supports what you've inputted into YouTube, even if it's not real, even if it's illegitimate. YouTube has just
Mhm.
agreed to pull off conspiracy theories around vaccinations. It's been a long time coming, but people, unfortunately, media literacy is something that is so important, and unfortunately, because social media is so, things go viral so quickly, and people have disavowed mainstream media, they're looking to things like social media for their news, and that's really dangerous. I mean, call CNN, call MSNBC, call Fox News what you want, right? The anchors on those shows, they are opinion talking heads. But the reporting that the reporters are doing in the field, at least on CNN, I can only speak for CNN because my show airs on CNN. It has to be fact checked like crazy, and then some. And if there is an error, the network will apologize. Now, that's different than some of the people who come on and are, expressing opinion. But the
Mhm.
reporting has to be vetted, it has to be fact checked. And so it's just really important for people to really verify sources. And if you've never heard of one of the outlets that is delivering information on YouTube, then continue to check some sources that you have heard about. Okay. I mean, it's so, so important.
So critically important. That is very, very good advice. I know we have a couple audience members that definitely want to ask you questions in just a minute, but I would love to get your take. Speaking of some topical news, these latest developments for Britney Spears. I mean, because we just learned recently that her father is no longer her conservator, at least of she the person. There will be a temporary conservator appointed to her. So have you been following all of that? And what do you make of the latest developments? And what is your wish for Britney Spears?
I mean, I can't say that I've been following it so meticulously, but I did meet Britney Spears when I was one of the co-hosts on The View. This was 20 years ago. And I'll never forget how shy she was. And the way she was even a little bit awkward. She was so young. And then when the cameras turned on and she was performing, it was like, I mean, it was just this complete transformation before my eyes. And even then, when I think back on her, I mean, again, she was so young, but she didn't seem like she had any control of her life. And, I sort of chalked it up to her being young, and, your parents at that age, there's every reason why they should be protective of you. But this idea that they have just been so in control of her life, even into adulthood, and that she has had no rights to her own likeness and to her own life it's just wrong. And so my hope for Britney is that she's able to live freely, and that's not just live freely of her parents, to live freely of all of us. I mean, when you think about what her parents had her do, right? Think about the space that she occupied in pop culture and how open and available she was to criticism, and still is, right? To any kind of criticism or opinion, or grown men. Remember those ads with like Bob Dole like salivating over her? Were they Pepsi ads or something like that? Like, I don't know. I just hope that she is able to live a life of peace and freedom, and the life that she has always wanted to live, that she's never been able to live.
I know. I'm right there with you. I think at least we're moving in the right direction some 13 years later. Wish her nothing but health and well-being, and yes, that freedom that you're talking about for sure.
Yeah.
We have an audience member who wants to ask you a question. Kelly Kozlowski, I believe, is first up. Kelly, go ahead, ask Lisa your question.
Thanks
Hi,
so
Kelly.
much. Hi, excited to bring a question. Thanks for taking it. So obviously you're well known for your on-air storytelling, but I'm wondering, since writing is such an important skill across all formats of journalism, if you would talk a bit about your relationship to writing.
Yeah, so I have penned a book with my sister called Somewhere Inside, and it's about my sister's captivity in North Korea and the efforts to get her released. And it was an amazing process because I got to do it with my sister so soon after she was released from, the most isolated country on earth. And I'm a pretty voracious reader. I need to write more. I write and contribute to writing most of the scripts for my show. But at some point, I will work on penning the definitive memoir. I don't know when that'll be because I have two young kids, and it's a process. But I love doing it, and nothing nothing gives me greater, as much fulfillment and excitement as reading beautiful writing. It incites something in me that nothing else can. So yeah, that's kind of my relationship. I love doing it. I need to do more.
Ooh, now I need a book recommendation. We all do. What's a book we need to be reading? Because I know you read a lot, and I somehow never find the time. So what's one book we should all have on our nightstand, right?
I mean, the last book that I read was Anderson Cooper's book Vanderbilt. I just interviewed him on Monday for a live talk, and it's fantastic. I mean, I've known Anderson Cooper for about 30 years, and I had known a couple of years after I had met him that he descended from one of the richest families in America at the time, but he's the most humble, unassuming, or was the most humble, unassuming guy who wore the same, flannel shirt every day and ate McDonald's and would go to war zones and sleep on bombed out buildings. And so when I found out, um, the family from which he descended, I was in a total state of shock. But it's really, as someone again who loves history, it's really this incredible window into the Gilded Age of America. But he also, talks about the things that were happening concurrently, and really, really makes a point of talking about the vast inequity that existed in America then and today.
Ooh, okay, good. That's on the list. Love that,
You'll love
Anderson
it.
Cooper.
You'll love it.
Okay, great, great, great. Okay, next up we have Charles. Charles has a question for you.
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Lisa. I love your show. Let me just say that. I'm curious, how do you find your topics? They're always very interesting, so I'm curious how you find them.
I read a lot. My team and I read a lot, but a lot of the stories that I do, some come from books, and some come from word of mouth. One of the most poignant episodes that I've ever done aired last season. You can find all the previous episodes on HBO Max. It's called The Prison and the Prep School, and it's about a reading group, a book club inside prison. It's a prison that houses more inmates serving life sentences than anywhere else in the state of California. And something remarkable happens in that episode that I had heard about through another inmate that I was visiting. I've collected a lot of interesting characters throughout my life, in my career. And I happened to be visiting an inmate in San Quentin prison. And he told me about this incredible book club. And I said to myself, I have to do this story somehow. And it culminated in us doing it last season. And so, there have been so many people who have said to me, Lisa, please look into the story. In fact, one of the episodes this coming season is about the history of sexual assault in the military. And one of the reasons why we decided to do that was after Private First Class Vanessa Guillen was killed in Fort Hood, Texas. I was overwhelmed with emails from female veterans saying, please look into this. Please do a story about sexual assault in the military, because nothing has changed since the tailhook scandal in the 1980s. So those are generally the ways that we find stories.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Charles. Thank you. Great questions. I know we don't have you forever, so just a couple more quick questions. One very important and serious, and one quite light. So let's go serious first. For everyone watching, what is the best way each of us can get involved to stop Asian hate? What can we do? What should we be doing?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that question. I think the best way to stop Asian hate long-term is to take the time to acquaint yourself with Asian people and Asian American history. There are some incredible books. There's some incredible documentaries. Watch my series when it comes out on HBO Max. But I think, look, knowledge leads to humanizing people. And when you don't have any frame of reference, it becomes so much easier to dehumanize. And look, if you have it within yourself to speak out about it, or even, there's some great online bystander trainings. They're very, very short. If you do that, like my 8-year-old's daughter's best friend did, I think that would be incredibly helpful.
Will do. And then the other extreme from that question, only because I'm going to end light and we're sipping something special. Good. And I know you love 80s music. If you could have a drink with any 80s musical icon, dead or alive, who would it be?
Well, I did have the drink with my favorite artist who has since passed away, and that was Prince. To me, the single most talented human being who ever walked the earth. Um, it's a longer story, but I went on a date with Prince when I was a co-host on The View, and all we did was talk. Yeah, we just had the most riveting conversation from about midnight to 5 a.m. Nothing happened. It was just an amazing conversation and evening. And he was truly one of the most remarkable human beings that I had ever gotten a chance to interact with. And I'm just still to this day, just, like devastated about his passing too early.
Wow.
Drop a little at the end of the conversation.
That's going to go in the memoir. Am I right?
Perhaps.
Oh my gosh. My sister drugged me to see Purple Rain at the movie theater. It was rated R. I think I was like 10. We had no business being there. And I think my mom's in the audience, but that was my first Prince memory. I saw Purple Rain way too young.
But I also saw it very young too. I saw it very young too, and it blew my mind. And what I will say about Prince, when I did spend that evening with him, was when he was, a very serious. I'm not going to say the specific religion to which he professed, but he was a very religious man. He had gone through a conversion, and so he was completely respectable and polite. And, we had a lovely, actually 2 nights. We had a lovely experience. It was not, it was not romantic. It turned out not to be romantic in a good way. But it was just a beautiful, let's just say I'll never forget it.
Oh, wow, that sounds magical. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you said yes to that date, by the way. And what a wonderful takeaway from your experience on The View, which I know taught you a lot of things. But hey, Prince, what a great takeaway.
Definitely.
God, thank you for sharing, Lisa. Thank you for being you and being so inspiring and telling the stories that need to be told. And we're always just rooting for you. You're awesome. Thank you. I don't know how else to say it. And I want to tell everyone watching to please check out This Is Life. Congratulations. The 8th season coming to CNN October 10th. That is Sunday. We will be watching, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you, everyone, for having a drink with us.
Yay, cheers, Lisa. Cheers, everyone. And you can watch this entire conversation on adrinkwith.com. Thanks again to our sponsors, Think Protein Bars, for bringing us all together. Have a good night, everyone. Bye. Oh, yeah, there she's dancing. Okay.